What up, guys? I'm former UFC fighter and current owner of Easton Training Center, Elliot Marshall.
I'm Scott Nickel, teaching pastor at Flatirons Community Church.
Scott, am I fucking going to hell?
Yes.
Welcome to the Saint
And the Sinner.
All right, everybody, welcome back to Saint and the Sinner. We're here with our friend Ian Lieberman, and we've been out for a couple weeks, and so world travelers.
World travelers,
Yeah.
all over the globe.
Yeah, I was in Uganda, which is the east side of Africa, so I brought Ebola back here to Easton's training center.
That's why Ian is being Scott. I haven't shake Scott's hand, no pound. No
there's been no greeting today.
No greeting today, man.
You actually walked around.
He's got 2 more weeks. He's been back a week, so the 21 days is the viral.
If they quarantine me, I would be so okay with that. There's that lady in Maine that's like all pissed about it, and she's been leaving her house and getting in trouble. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I have. I read about it.
Yeah, she's like refusing her quarantine. Like, somebody's gonna make me stay in my house all day for a couple weeks. I'm not gonna go force the issue.
Sure. But they'd have to take your email away too, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's your email that you hate.
I hate my email.
Yeah.
If somebody quarantined me from email, man, that would be the gift that keeps on giving. That'd be like Christmas.
You'd be like, oh yes, you are true. You're true.
That's right. You're objectively, obviously true. Yeah. So I was in Africa. You were in Brazil, and Ian, you were holding it down.
I was here. Yeah,
you were holding it down.
down.
So you work at the Easton Training Center in Denver, right?
Yeah, I'm the general manager of the Denver location.
Cool.
So,
and you just got your black belt.
I did. Yeah, after about 8.5 years.
8.5 years.
So,
congrats, man. That's
thanks,
awesome.
man. I really appreciate it.
If anybody wants to come try to pass this guard, any of you jiu-jitsu freaks, come have at it.
Impossible to pass Ian's guard.
No,
not
definitely
happening.
not.
I wouldn't say it's not impossible.
Yeah.
But,
Scale of 1 to 10.
He's done it quite a few times.
No, but not
He's
recently. Not recently. I haven't done it recently.
Yeah.
I probably haven't done it in 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah. So how's this work with you guys? Is so if someone's a black belt, are they considered an Amal Easton black belt?
Everyone's an Amal Easton black belt.
Okay, all right. So you don't give people
even if I give the black belt, it's an Amal
still
Easton
an Amal
black
Easton
belt.
black belt.
Yep.
Okay, I didn't know how that.
We're
worked.
all under one roof, and that's the roof.
That's cool.
I had to explain this to Kanan the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was like, he's like, Daddy, so you're the number 2 professor, and I was like, yes. He goes, why is Professor Easton the number 1? Why? He goes, why is Mr. Amal the number 1 professor?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, because he gave me my black belt, so I can't. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I was like, can you ever be my dad? And he goes, no, you're my dad.
Right.
And I'm like, well, it's kind of like that.
Bingo.
He's like, but Mr. Amal's not your dad. He calls my dad Beeps. He goes, Beeps is your dad. And I'm like, we'll get there.
Now we're getting kids are really into rankings.
Yeah.
My son Eli is very concerned about that. He wants to know who I'm the boss of, who's my boss, all that kind of stuff. It's funny. So
yeah, and I noticed this too. Well, as far as the ranking thing, so Kanan was playing with Amal's kids the other day, in here, and we had to clean up the school, and Kanan goes, my daddy said it's time to clean up, and he's the boss of the school. And then Ella goes, no, my daddy's the boss of the school. And they're like,
going down.
And they're like, wait a minute. They're like, how can you both be the boss? and Kanan was like, Daddy, even though Mr. Amal is number 1, are you still the boss? I'm like, well, when it comes to the boss, yes, we're both the boss. Right. But he's the number 1 professor.
Way too confusing.
Way too confusing.
Yeah. So Ian, are you do you actually teach a lot of classes now, or does the general manager stuff take you away from that? Or?
I teach a fair amount. I teach a lot of the advanced classes with the Guion. But I'm pretty busy with the general manager part of it. But I'm still glad I'm able to teach. I really enjoy being able to be with the students. I think it's really good for like my connectivity with them. But I'm busy doing both, but I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly.
Ian's probably the best teacher we have.
Nice.
Between all the schools, almost like if you look at like which I do, the class attendance.
Sure.
His class attendance, the advanced classes that he teaches, they blow every other
class
class
out. That's how you can tell, right? Like, people want to be on the mat with, the person that works for them, right?
Like we try to have like a 12-person attendance, and we'll call that a good class. Yeah. No, a good class.
Oh, okay.
A really well-attended class is like 20, and Ian's is like 36.
Whoa.
I'm really lucky though. I have to be, I appreciate it, but I'm really lucky because the classes that I teach are the prime time classes.
Yeah.
They're on our busiest days, so it's like that has obviously a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
But I'm super lucky because everyone, it's a great place to teach, and it's a really good place to train.
Yeah, people rearrange their schedules though to be with the coach they want to be with. I've seen that with CrossFit and Jiu-Jitsu, you know. So that's a tribute to you, man. That's cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So have you been with Easton's the whole?
I started with Easton's. In fact,
That's
Elliot,
awesome.
Elliot and Amal, like Finney and Nick, were all my first teachers.
So that's got to be pretty rewarding to watch somebody all the way from white belt to black belt. How many people have you gotten to do that with?
Almost all of them.
About how many black belt, like roughly? Whole bunch?
How many black belts do we have?
This last one you gave what? 3? Was there 4 at the same time?
It was
That's
the
pretty
fearsome
unique.
4. They're the fearsome 4.
That's pretty
you know?
unique. That's awesome.
Yeah, I started.
They
with
came up together.
those guys.
So with those 4, so how many has them all seen? Those 4, me, Nick, his brother, Finney, Suskin, Jay, almost all of them.
That's awesome.
We probably have almost, we're inching on 20 black belts.
That's cool.
I think we might have more than that.
No, we don't have more than that.
So do you compete very often?
I did. I don't know as much anymore, honestly. I've had some injuries, you know, and especially since I've been, and maybe that's an excuse. I probably should compete more, honestly, but I haven't been competing as much. James, one of the other guys, and Brian, the other 2 guys I got my black belts with, they compete pretty often.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been really trying, I still train every single day, and I try to, train a couple times a day usually, but I've been really focused on trying to get better at, my job, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a new challenge. I'm really, really enjoying that. So that's something I'm putting a lot of energy into. But
cool.
I'll probably start competing. I want to compete as a black belt for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Speaking of competing, Neil Magny tied the record.
Tied the record.
What is it, 5 wins in 1 year?
In 1 year.
And he's got 6 in a row. Is that right? Or no, 5 in a row?
I think it's 5 in a row.
5 in a row.
I think it's 5 in a row.
It's awesome. I didn't get to see much but the highlights, but it looked like he fought pretty well.
He fought really well. He fought super well. Super excited for him.
Mm-hmm. He hurt the guy at the end of the second round. And
he hurt the guy at the end of the second.
It's interesting because you talk about this a lot about how somebody's really dangerous when they're hurt. And
I guess I guess I said it.
Yeah, everybody could hear you.
So
coaching him up a little bit.
Just because when a guy is hurt and then he gets a rest, he knows he doesn't have much left.
Yeah.
You know, so he's going to come really, really hard in the beginning. You know, of that next round, whenever that may be. So he's going to put everything into it. So you have to be ready as the guy who just hurt somebody. That it's not like you're still in the round and you hurt him. You know what I mean? And because then they're still all messed up.
Yeah, like his meter gets to go from empty to just a little bit, right?
Yes.
He can spend it fast.
Yes. So I get nervous when I get a couple things going. I'm like, oh man, my wife knows what I'm doing. Is she calling me right now? You know?
Do you have the two ring rule?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do too. She breaks that rule sometimes. It pisses me off.
They always do. They don't follow it. So you have to know as the fighter, but sometimes you're so excited that you just hurt the guy.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I'm going to go kill right now.
Yeah.
Coming out of, like with Tim Kennedy.
Right. Romero.
Whatever happened on the stool happened on the stool. I don't think the fight would have been much different. Right. Because Tim Kennedy would have come to crush and Romero
was hurt,
but had 30 seconds. Yeah. So, you always have to try to. That's your job as a cornerman. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to give them any new tools.
Yeah, right. Yeah, do this. Yeah.
You're gonna make little small suggestions. Be positive. Your talk needs to be positive so that. And Greg Jackson does this awesome.
Yeah, I've heard.
You know what I mean? When your talk has to be loud and positive in the middle of the round, so that the judges. That's what the judges are hearing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? If the judges are hearing, no, don't do that, don't do this, yes, no, they're like, oh, who knows, right? Yeah. But if every time you land a punch, you're like, oh, yes, and you're clapping, you know what I mean?
Greg Jackson is always going, it's beautiful, that's beautiful, you're winning this fight, John Jones. It's like,
and there's nothing going on.
Yeah, he's not doing anything.
Yeah, there's nothing going on, and you're like, damn. Yeah. That was a close round. I wonder how they scored it.
So Neil should probably be about to crack the top 10. I know that's a stacked division, but
it's crazy. He's nowhere near the top 10.
He should be, but
he's number 35.
It's crazy.
It's such a deep division. I mean, it really, really is.
I know.
But if you win 5 fights in a row,
he told this to me before, right?
Jeez. He was sitting 35 before?
Before his fight, he was sitting at 35.
So where is he now?
I don't know. He probably went
15 at the best.
No, he didn't go up
not
20
that far.
spots. But I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like 35. I was like, how are you not like 15?
How are there even 35 deep?
Yeah,
That's the other thing.
You know? And he was like, yeah, man, I'm 35. I was
Heavyweight division's got like 12 fighters.
12 fighters. Yeah.
What is he? Is he middle?
Middleweight. No, welterweight.
Welterweight, 170.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. Weight cut went good and everything. He doesn't struggle too much with cutting, does he?
the weight cut. The weight cut. The weight cut went well.
I always worry about
Yeah.
guys who are in those other countries and they got to cut weight, you know.
The weight cut went easy.
Cool.
Man, fucking Brazilians, bro. This is so annoying.
Here we go. The jiu-jitsu community gonna get split up.
Like, I don't understand you. I don't understand them. Like, it's nice to have one person in the sauna with you.
You almost addressed them as you guys, like we got a big Brazilian contingency.
I don't understand what they do. So it's always nice to have one person, one of your coaches or somebody, your buddy, go sit in the sauna with you. They don't do it that way. The whole fucking team
whole crew, they
goes in the sauna. So that you don't have room, like, guys, even as the fighter.
Yeah, you got like grandpa in there cutting weight.
And like, you're like, dude, there's 12 of you in the sauna. Get the fuck out. You don't need to be in here.
That's how a Brazilian
You know?
scrap in the sauna.
And one, like, that air's hot in there. And there's not a lot of it.
No.
So, like, 12 dudes sucking the air when there could only be 3?
Yeah.
Like, I understand, man. You, your friend.
Yeah.
The other guy, his buddy.
Yeah.
And when it gets too crowded, all of the corners go out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
But I remember there was a guy when Cody was cutting weight when we were in there together who was in there doing like push-ups and stuff. He was just like some fighter's third cousin or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, what we do is a little bit of... He's doing push-ups and jumping jacks and all this stuff. And we're just sitting there like, yeah, that's not how he's going to cut weight, bro. We're not doing any of that. It's like old school wrestler, you know?
Right.
I saw the dumbest thing inside of a sauna. So this one guy...
This is going to be a great story.
For those of you that have cut weight before, you'll get this. For those of you that haven't cut weight before, look, when you're cutting weight and you're that low and you're that dehydrated, you're not thinking about food. Like, you don't want a big steak.
Yeah,
You just want water on your mouth, right? Liquid. You're not thinking about getting laid. You're not thinking about any of this stuff. And it doesn't matter because you're on the verge of not surviving life. Right, you're flirting with this "I'm gonna die" feeling, because technically that's kind of what you're doing. You're working your way to as close to death as you can,
slowly,
very slowly, right? That's what this weight cut process is. So you're not thinking about all the pleasures. You know what I mean? You're not like, oh man, I wish I had like 5 chicks right now. Like, you're not doing that.
Too dehydrated.
So
anyway.
This one coach who is a total crackhead out there is talking to one of his fighters, who's struggling, and he's like, dude. 3 minutes, man. 3 minutes. When we get back to Vegas, I'm going to get you 3 hookers. Okay? If you stay in here for 3 minutes, I'm going to get you 3 hookers, and that will be 1 hooker for every fucking minute you stay in here. And this guy doesn't even understand what he's saying. Like, his eyes are all glossed over. He's looking at him like this. Like you're looking at it going, dude, you're not helping.
You're not helping.
Yeah. And then we get out. And then the fighter has to go back in. And it's the worst thing ever. He's only giving the fighter 30 seconds of rest out of the sauna in between 8-minute sessions. And that's not the way it goes.
No.
If you do an 8-minute session, you get 3 minutes of rest at the minimum. But you have to mentally recover a little bit to go back in.
Guys refusing to go back in.
Yeah.
Like,
this guy was refusing. So anyway, he puts the guy back in. And the coach is talking to the guy's dad. Right? And the coach goes, it's all right, man. He's struggling, but I'm saying all the right things to him in there. He's good. And I'm just like, oh, my Lord.
Amateur hour.
I'm like, this is the UFC, right? We're not at the fucking Rocky Mountain bad boys over here, are we? I'm like, how is this even going on right now?
Well, just so you know, you have listeners in Uganda. I had a couple guys who were like, who is this Elliot?
Oh, yeah.
My buddy Hareel over there, he's like, who's this Elliot that you argue with all the time? Who is this? Yeah.
What's his name?
His name's Hareel.
Hi, Hareel.
Hareel Kazindra. Yeah, he's a good dude, man. He was he had to fly out to go to, he said, I'm flying to Ireland. And
nice.
I was like, what? I was like, you mean Ireland? He's like, yes. Like, he had a meeting up there to talk about some biofuel thing he was meeting with some guys about. But turns out he was meeting with some people that like were some of my best friends back in Kentucky that are his investors for this thing. So it's like cool. A small world. That's cool. But yeah, you take a guy from Uganda and put him in Ireland and he's going to be cold. So I can't wait to hear from Hareel. Because he came over here 2 years ago when it was really cold during the day. They tried to take him skiing and he was just not having it. He was like, no, way too cold for me. They'll wear like suits. They're really formal over there. So like it'd be 98 degrees.
I saw some of the pictures.
You'll see dudes.
And you
walking
guys are
around.
all like,
yeah, we're like we're like sunscreening it up, like shorts and t-shirts. Yeah, they're more formal over there. So if something is important, they put on a suit, man. It's scary. It's hot.
Nice.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, Ian's here.
hold on,
Go
I
ahead,
got
go
one
ahead.
more.
Yeah.
It's been fully. I told you this the other day. It's been fully confirmed that I don't believe in God.
Oh yeah.
You know?
You know about Elliot's fear of flying, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
know
it's
about
well
it.
documented.
So it got bad. Right?
I heard the story.
So my flight out to Brazil gets terrible, and everyone says that, like Cody said, there's no atheists in a foxhole.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there are.
He'll just say your foxhole wasn't long enough. You would have gotten there. It was only 10 seconds.
Yeah, well, that 10 seconds is a fucking long 10
That's
seconds.
a long time to free
So
fall.
anyway, we're flying. No turbulence at all. And then all of a sudden, 10 seconds of just dropping. And the only thing holding you in the seat or holding you off the roof is your seatbelt. So your ass is off the air. You're in like a roller coaster. Everyone's holding on, scream the whole plane.
Did you
Just,
scream?
Oh, fuck yeah, I screamed, man.
What kind of scream? Like, was it a manly scream? Was it
It
a...
was just like, oh! Like, you know what I mean? Like, you were fucking scared.
Yeah.
You know? 10 seconds of the plane just dropping. You know?
And you did not pray.
And I didn't even think about it.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that this was it. For sure.
You thought that was it. This is the big one.
I was like, I guess this plane's going down.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And you know, and then I looked up when it stopped and we're over water.
Oh, yeah.
And we have 5 hours left to travel. So you're like, well, if there's something wrong with the plane, we're fucked.
Yeah.
You know? And they never came over the loudspeaker to say anything.
They never said
All they did,
like, we're sorry.
all they did is, I guess somebody wasn't in their seat and they went
Oh,
up and
yeah,
hit their
that's
head.
bad news.
So they just asked for doctors. They're like, we need trained medical professionals.
I had a buddy who, somebody died on a plane he was on coming back from Hawaii.
Because
Oh, my God.
No, just died, just like old person, had like a
yeah.
a heart attack or whatever, and his wife's a nurse, and so she had to for like 6 hours go work on this person. And basically, this person was dead,
That's
and then
crazy.
so they like ran IVs and did CPR for like forever. But he's like, everybody knew this person's dead, and so that like they're all sitting there for like 6 hours with a dead person, and then when they land, they have to bring the coroner on, you know. So
Oh,
you're all
yeah.
sitting there. They don't let everybody else get off
Right.
first. They got to do that first, and he said it was like the craziest thing.
my friend Shannon
Mm.
had a kid, drown in a puddle, right? In Lafayette, like 2 years ago. Puddle. Kid drowned.
Wow.
Crazy, right? And he did everything he could, you know? And the kid goes. But kids sometimes especially do this thing where after they're dead, their body takes a breath,
Right.
but they're dead.
So you start to believe.
You know what I mean?
Start to freak out.
He's like, you can't let the parents in there.
No way.
Because they're going to be, you know what I mean?
Immediately goes.
So he said this happened for an hour and a half.
Ooh.
So he just, and he can't let the nurses be in there.
Yeah.
So he just had to sit in this room with this dead
Oh.
child that he just tried to save.
Oh,
Couldn't,
Oh,
you know,
my God.
brutal.
for an hour and a half.
That's
Just
awful.
looking at, you know what I mean? He's got kids, so you know the thoughts in your head, you're just like, oh.
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor, yeah.
Yeah,
here
that's
in
that
town.
guy's trump card. Anytime somebody tries to give him crap about his hours or how much money he makes, just tell that story
Yeah.
for a second.
There you go,
How
man.
was your day?
Yeah.
That's his trump card.
All right, so let's get into
Yeah,
it.
so Ian's here because Ian's been. Have you listened a lot?
I
I know-
listen all the time, and I
Okay.
comment, and I...
Yeah, you're a Facebook. You're one of our Facebook faithful.
It's my
you know.
fault. It's my fault because he sits back in the office sometimes and he's working and I'm on Facebook.
Were you the one though when we started this? Was he the one who was like, "Wait, there's a Facebook page"?
Yes.
that was you.
Yes.
Yeah, I was like, oh, man.
So Ian sees me commenting, or you know,
And then I read it.
he sees me commenting on to some, I don't know, some dumb shit your team said.
Here's one of his things, man. He's allowed to call names. Nobody else is.
I said dumb shit your team says.
It started.
Your team says some more
started
dumb
as
shit.
an adjective.
Your team says way more dumb shit than my team.
There's just
And
more on my team, man. That's
What's
what I
that?
keep trying to tell you. But the odds are against me on that one,
I know
just
that
per
you're
capita.
Right. Yeah, you're right there.
So
Ian sees me and he thinks I'm on like some private thing, and I'm like, dude, you should talk about it. You should get on there and say something. And he looks at me like I just presented God to him, and he goes, and he goes, "There's a Facebook page." And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "That I can post on?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh man, I'm gonna waste a lot of time."
was like, oh no.
At least you confessed it to the boss right off the bat, right?
I did. I've been pretty good about it. I don't do it at work anymore. I just go home and sit there on my computer.
It'll suck the life out of you if you get on there for too long. You know what I mean? Because some people, man, they're fast. We've got a few Facebook commenters that they will respond within seconds.
That's the worst because they're having a conversation.
Jake is like that. Jake,
he writes dissertations, man.
And it's like seconds later, you know, it's like he has it typed out
already.
He's ready to hit enter. So yeah, I'm curious, what's been like overall, like your experience with Satan the Sinner?
I think it's been like, first of all, I think it's really good because this is sort of you are doing what I think is necessary, and I think what anyone who like is someone who doesn't believe wants to happen, and I just think religion needs to be scrutinized. You know, and I think that's the thing that we're not really able to do in a public forum. You know, like when the second you walk out of this office, like we all have to be kind of, especially us, we have to be quiet. I feel like we do about what we believe, what we don't believe. You know, and that's something I actually like. I didn't know what we were going to be discussing, but I had a couple questions that some things I kind of wanted to talk about that I think need to be. You know, and maybe the audience is bored of it at this point, but need to be cleared up. And that's this idea. The first thing is that atheism is a thing, right?
Yeah, a lot of you guys have been bringing that up.
Because you had this one article that got a lot of airtime, you know, about how kind of Hitler and Stalin and Pol Pot, all these different, atheist leaders were, responsible for all these deaths, and you kind of the problem, and like I know Elliot and I are big Sam Harris. We watch him a lot and read him, and I know you've read some of them.
Yeah.
But I think it's right for him when he said he talks about how atheism. The problem with like kind of calling ourselves atheists is that it turns into this illusion that we have some sort of doctrine that we're following,
and we're jumping into your boat.
Yeah, and we don't.
It's your version of a religion.
Sure. You know,
and it's not. I mean, there is. And I want to point out, and I've tried to say this before, but you're an atheist too.
To others.
To other religions. And I think that's something that's important to note. So there's like 4,200 religions. You're an atheist to 4,199 of them. And we just have one more on the list. You know? And I'm not, in no way am I saying that religion is responsible for, because I think a lot of people wonder why we even bother scrutinizing it.
Right.
And that's because, and I won't deny there are things that it does that are good, but there's also a lot of things, it's intrinsically divisive. And it's like, I think when you have people believing things with certainty on bad evidence, that's a problem, especially when there's so many competing ideas.
So let me talk about the atheist to all other things just real fast. I hear what you're saying in that you're saying like I don't believe in the God of Islam, or I don't believe in the 5,000 gods of Hinduism or whatever that is. It's not exactly the same thing though, because I do have more in common with someone who believes there's a creator of the universe. So Judaism, Islam, things like that, than somebody who thinks there's not. So I'm not atheistic in the same sense as you are atheistic to all. There's no way there's a creator of the universe, where I would say I do have some things in common with other religious people who go, I think there has to be a creator.
We're not atheistic to a creator of the universe.
So like
no.
Well, that's why I always come back to I think you're agnostic.
Yeah, I know. So this is the problem with the terms. It's a term.
It's a trick of words.
It's a term problem because atheist technically does mean not a believer in God. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or of a higher power.
Right.
But I don't believe that's either one of ours, and I don't believe that's any atheists.
Well, Sam Harris is definitely an anti-theist.
He is Sam Harris is a non-believer.
Well, he would put himself in the same boat as Hitchens and Dawkins and Dennett and all those guys who have gladly assumed the title of anti-theist. I've read them claim that title. So they may be speaking out of both sides of their mouth, but it gets a lot of press.
They are atheist, and you correct me too if I'm wrong, to everything that's been introduced.
Which is what you say all the time.
So they deny the dogma of religious doctrine. If you like, they do not. You will never hear. But look, if an atheist sits down and he says, "Look, I know for sure there's no God," well, then yes, then that's someone I don't agree with. It's impossible to prove. That's the entire issue with religion, right? It's the fact that you can't. It's not falsifiable.
Sure.
And that's an issue, right? That is an issue that you guys don't contend with. But how would you prove that Christianity is not true?
Right, yeah, you can't go. We've talked about this.
You
can't go get me the bones of Jesus. All that.
No, so
you can't rewind the clock and look at before there was time.
And that's a problem. Like with that, that is a one of the since there's no revision of belief, right? You can't revise your beliefs based on evidential substance. Then that means that especially in a scientific field, like it's invalid, right? That there is nothing that in science that can't be disproven, right? So you can't disprove Christianity. Islam can't be disproven. None of the religions, you can't really disprove a negative. Mm-hmm. So that's that, and then that becomes I feel like by different religions, it's constantly thrown back in the faces of unbelievers. Back to just not to get too far off base, but. Atheism. I don't deny that they're I don't know. That's where I rest, and I don't know.
So that's not atheism.
No, it is. Because I do not. Here's what I would say. I think it's highly unlikely.
Sure.
Extremely. Look at this. Look how unlikely this is. This scenario where.
So why would you not claim the title of agnostic? I mean, I don't care what title you claim. That doesn't matter to me.
It's too soft.
It's too. Yeah,
because it means I don't know.
Because
it means exactly what you just said.
It's too soft.
Define faith. Because that's something that this kind of plays into it. How would you define your faith?
How would I define my faith? Yeah. Believing that God is who He says He is and will do everything He's ever promised to do. That's the way I define faith.
So I guess what I would ask is
living my life according to that, not just belief.
But so the way you define faith, that definition seems to carry more weight than saying something like "I hope it's so," "I hope it's so," or "I wish it's so."
It's not wishful thinking.
No, it's not wishful thinking. So I guess my question is, how far, on that continuum, how far are you? Are you sure? Are you positive that there's a God?
Yeah, this is where I think we started by going, I think you said, who is it that gave the 1 to 7
Dawkins
or whatever?
Mm-hmm. I got it backwards.
Yeah. Okay, well, whatever. So, if it was, scale of 1 to 10, 10 being I'm absolutely sure, I never have a doubt, whatever that is, I'm like an 8, something like that. I don't know. I have doubts all the time, and that's why I think any honest believer would have to admit that, I have doubts. I have dark nights of the soul. I wrestle with things. I have moments of I'm not sure,
Where does your doubt come from?
Lots of different places, probably. I would say sometimes it's circumstantial. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's when you find yourself in a difficult spot, you start to question man, God, I would do it differently if I were you. I think that's a lot of where doubt comes from. I think sometimes there are there's those, and we've tried to address a lot of those in this, is those false. Sometimes people tend to build their faith on things that your faith doesn't need to rise or fall on. Mm-hmm. Another one, the example that's always used, for Elliot is, 6 days literal creation, or the Earth's 6 to 10,000 years old. My faith doesn't have to rise or fall on that at all. Some people have set it up as if it should or has to, and I don't believe that it does. And so sometimes you have these crises where you have to address these things and go, was this an essential thing to my faith? No, I don't think it was,
And I want to, since you brought it up, I don't think your faith needs to rise or fall on it either.
Right.
The problem with religion.
Except that you keep bringing it up.
That's why
I keep going, bro. We've addressed
because there are a lot of people who do.
And I know.
This is the problem with it. This is the problem with religion, is that I can get on the Facebook and someone can tell me that these things aren't true. Right?
Yeah, but you could equally say that's the problem with whatever, fill in the blank. It's the problem with baseball.
No.
They're idiot baseball writers.
But the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
The rules of baseball are the rules of baseball.
Yeah. No, because somebody may be interpreting the rules wrong.
No, is an out an out?
Huh?
A strike is a strike, and an out is an out.
A strike is a very subjective thing.
Yeah, it's a strike. Sure, I know what you're saying. You know what I mean? But the rules are the rules. At the end of the 9th inning, the game is over. After
there are some things that are.
And how does the game start?
It's no longer Christianity.
Right, but how does the game start? How does baseball start? There's no wondering how the baseball starts, right?
Sure.
And you can't argue with how baseball starts. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Your team is on the side of arguing with how baseball starts.
No,
and this is my problem.
That's a terrible metaphor.
Yeah, so look,
I think it's a pretty good
so
one.
it's not actually.
So here's the problem, though, right? This is one of the inherent problems, right? So you have and you can actually step back from a wider lens and look at this more objectively. So you have your religion, and you have people, like, you have an inerrant book, okay? This book was written, right? Like, and I know in Islam it's the Quran, and that's written by the perfect creator of the universe. So when you have an inerrant text, right, how do you navigate that? Because there is a lot, and like I know there's a lot of hateful things in the Bible. There's a lot of hateful things in the Quran, right? My question is, how can you basically chastise someone for reading the Bible literally? Right, and then on the other hand, talk basically it's in a way take a higher road and say that, well, they're not looking at it from as nuanced as a perspective as they should. Okay,
Yeah.
That's the issue that we have. It's that I mean, and that's great. Like there are Christians who look at the Bible and and I've known many of them who take the good things, right? That's not what we're arguing, right?
Right.
And even still, I don't think it's good. Like, I think another question I have for you is: are you more concerned with the truth of, like, sort of navigating and mapping onto our own realities, evidence, like the truth? Are you more interested in the truth, or are you more interested in something that's consoling? Because when I look at religion, that's what I see. I see when someone, like, what better way is there to console someone from death? And I think that's what it really all boils down to, is consoling. We have this sort of almost unacceptable circumstance that we're all in, and that's that we're all going to die, right? And some sooner than others. And it's like, how do you... if you lose your daughter or something, or you lose your son in some sort of, they get sick or some sort of accident, right? That's where religion, like, kind of just comes rushing in to save, because what more consoling story is there? So I think that when we are talking about religion, that's what we're talking about. It's where we go when we die, right? Yeah. I think that's a lot of it. I don't think it's really how to live. Right, I really don't, because there's so many different competing claims. So it's like, I want to know how you kind of rectify this. Like, how do you justify the fact that people read this literally? Okay. Right?
Yeah. So the same way that I would be upset with somebody if they went and read a poem and they read that through the lens of a historical report. You see what I'm saying? So, like, different genres have to be read based on the way they're supposed to be
the
read.
Bible,
so there are different
text.
There are historical parts of the Bible. There are metaphorical parts of the Bible. So, like, when you read through the Psalms and somebody's writing a bunch of poems, and they talk about, the trees clapping their hands in reverence to God. The trees aren't actually clapping their hands. It's a metaphor. It's a poem. So what happens is, oftentimes, especially in Hebrew literature, if you look back at even secular Hebrew literature, there's a much different way of writing where people weren't as concerned with literally one word having to mean only one thing, and we have this problem in the English language where we have one word for love, and you love pizza and you love your daughter. Right. Whereas if you look at Greek, there's four, and they mean very different things. And so the reason that I would chastise somebody for reading the Bible 100% literally throughout it is because not all of it was intended to be literally read throughout because they're different genres. Okay, so look, so now we're playing a dangerous game here, I think, because there are truths from the Bible, like, that Christianity hinges on, like the resurrection of Christ. Right. How do we know that is not? Well, because that was a historical report written by somebody.
How do you know it's not the same thing with some Hebrew word?
No, because here's a guy. So we'll take Luke, for example, who was a doctor who went into full.
Let me just say, because I know we throw out the word doctor here. He is a different doctor than the way Shannon was a doctor. Yeah. They didn't. We're talking about people who didn't know, like, what a disease is. They didn't know what bacteria
but we
is.
also make these big wide swath assumptions that everybody from 2,000 years ago were blithering idiots who couldn't.
No,
write
that's
their
not
name.
what I'm saying. But
he says stuff like this all the time, like they couldn't even spell their name, and that's not true. Do you believe was Socrates a smart guy? Was Plato a smart guy? So don't just.
No.
All I'm saying is don't say he was an idiot.
Yeah, but hold on. But you're saying that I'm saying that the scribes who wrote the Bible, to be a scribe. So this was my point. I didn't say all of the guys.
Scribes were legit, man.
Those guys, they were not. You're so wrong.
Look. Here's the thing. Here's what I would say to you. I'll grant you that. Yes, I don't think that everybody, back then.
And I'll grant it too.
Was an idiot.
As an idiot. I'm not saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying don't swing.
There are people that are much smarter. I'm sure there were people that in terms of intelligence rival the smartest people we have now. But as a civilization, right, we are much more evolved.
You can't throw out the word doctor.
Yeah,
you can't throw out the word doctor because everyone's going to say, oh, he's like the best doctor. Luke is the best doctor I've ever known.
No, but hold on.
Compared to actual knowledge,
you're changing the game. All right, so let me just say this real quick. So if a guy's a doctor 2,000 years ago, all right,
he's a doctor in that time,
and he's able to use the resources at his disposal to help people to make them better, he's a doctor, right? That's all I'm saying. I was just throwing out what he did for a living.
You want Jim Thorpe? Jim Thorpe, or do you want?
I want Bo Jackson over Jim Thorpe.
Yeah, who do you want?
Sure, that's not my point. No. All I was trying to say was, here's a guy who did an undertaking of historical fact. He's looking at, here's the evidence taken from all these different people. He's compiling, he's putting it together. He says at the outset, this is a historical report versus writing a poem. Okay, so those are two different things. So he's making a claim. So to answer Ian's question, he's making a claim saying, judge this based on the historicity of it, because I'm claiming to make a historical report. He's not writing a poem, which you find in the Song of Solomon in the Old Testament, where you're left to now we have to interpret when he talks about that, talks about those two fawns, he's actually talking about that lady's breasts, so that's the difference. One is written as a poem.
I think we can throw all the poems away. Right?
Yeah.
Let's just take the history and the history. Genesis, Exodus. Let's just take the history and the history. Deuteronomy.
Sure.
Right. Leviticus. All these great. Let's just take. But that's claiming history.
Right. Yeah.
Genesis is
you got to read them as they were intended to be read. The books of the Old Testament of creation and they're also
Passover and all these things, right?
Yes.
They're not. We don't have to do any interpretation here.
Well, you do with certain things, you always want to look at the creation account as the one you like to come back to. You have it told two different ways in the first few chapters. One is a very poetic, one is a day-by-day, linear, the other is a very kind of poetic description of it. And if you look at them, they're doing different things. And so again, in Hebrew literature, that was a very common thing to do. They didn't even tell stories from beginning to end.
So I know what he's going to say, but I'm going to let you say it. Go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say, this whole... The Bible is a huge book that is contradicting itself all over the place.
Like where?
Right. Everywhere. Example, you just talked about the creation story, right? And I guess as a non-believer, and keep in mind, this is not the Bible. The Quran, right, is the same. First of all, the Quran denounces anyone who believes in Christian, in Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior. So I just wanted to kind of harken back to your initial claim where you said you have more in common with someone who believes that there is a creator than someone who's an unbeliever, and I take issue with that a little bit.
Only in that we believe in a creator. So it's not this. What I was trying to say was it's not the same as saying I'm atheistic towards them. We both believe that there's a creator.
But you deny the doctrine of Islam.
Yes.
Right. Yep. So that is what we're saying. In the same way you deny the Quran, I deny the Bible. I deny none of I deny dogma and nationalism is dogma. I think that's the underlying issue here is dogma. It's not just that I disagree with the stories in the Bible. I do, right? But it's dogmatic, right?
What do you mean when you say that?
Say what?
What do you mean by dogma or
dogma? So, for example, any dogma. So, dogma is there's religious dogma, which is basically it's a set of beliefs, right? That a rigid set of beliefs that people adhere to, right? And it's like nationalism is dogma. If you look at there's religious dogma, there's nationalistic dogma, there's any sort of doctrinal doctrinal belief. Right?
My understanding of the word dogma is that it's a set of beliefs that weren't in the original religion that have been brought in and that have now. And that's what it is in the Catholic Church for sure.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, dogma.
Yeah, it's
the Gracies.
There's the difference between doctrine and dogma.
The Gracies, right? Like Helio's side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
All you need to do is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to fight in MMA today.
Right.
That's a dogma.
Right.
Yeah, dogma is just a belief system.
That's a dogma. It's not religious. It's not. You know what I mean?
Okay. So I just want to know how you were defining that.
That is dogma.
Yep.
So any type of dogma is where Ian and I are going to start to have a problem.
Because people stop thinking for themselves. Like in North Korea, for example, right? That is nationalistic dogma, and it's also it is also in a way like it is sort of a religion in a way, almost like a pseudo religion, just because you have people who are worshiping the emperor as though he is a living god, right? That is dogma.
Well, this is where I think we have a lot in common. I mean, I'm the first to say I think one of my biggest beefs with a lot of Christians is that they're not critical thinkers, and that's why
you can't be both. This is my
I can. I can actually be a critical thinker and be a Christian. In fact, I'm instructed to be a critical thinker by Christianity
to a point, but there's an end to it. There's an end game,
which is what?
Jesus and God.
Then what? I don't understand what you're
trying to say. There's no end game for me, and there's no end game for him. We will critically think all through it all. You're going to end because you won't. Your brain can't wrap around no Jesus.
That's just not true. That's just absolutely not true. That's why I can sit here and have these discussions with you guys and interact with all the points that people want to bring to contend with Christianity. That's me actually thinking through those things.
No, it's you.
That's what I'm doing.
I'm going to say it's you stopping.
No, I'm not. If I was stopping, I wouldn't even do the podcast.
But it's you stop. No, you'll think about it.
If I was stopping, I wouldn't read Sam Harris.
You'll think about it. But there's no way that it could actually possibly be true. You stop.
So you're just making assumptions about my relative willingness to if I. So
I'm very willing to be shown your God.
Yeah, well, what would make you revise your beliefs?
Well, we've talked about this.
No, but this is important. This is the most important question.
This is dogma.
Well, no, that you have to somehow show to me that Jesus did not rise from the dead.
And that's impossible, right?
Right.
So you won't revise
I can't change the fact that that's not possible, but it is true. That is the foundation of my Christianity.
That's where we're going to disagree.
Yeah.
Where I'm going to say that you're going to not revise your belief ever.
Day in history, I believe Jesus rose from the grave. I'm sorry that it's not falsifiable and that we can't.
That's where your critical thinking
stops.
Ends. So that's our point. Is why you guys will only critically think to a point, and then it has to stop. Where I am very willing and open to be shown Jesus as the Lord and Savior.
I'm also very willing and open to the fact that I am not the arbiter of everything, and so I don't have to go out and figure this. I don't have to go out and prove or disprove everything. Like I don't think I'm God. I don't think I'm the czar of the universe. So I'm okay with limits. You know.
And I appreciate that stance. However, I think this is like something else that I actually wanted to kind of discuss quickly. I feel like it's very often spun around and made to sound as though, because I hear the word humility a lot, right? And it's made to sound as though we are the ones who are the kind of getting on this
the arrogant
ones.
Yeah, this arrogance that we know everything, and the entire thing, my entire that we rest on is I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'm not the one making like really extraordinary claims about the nature of the cosmos, about where we go when we die. Mm-hmm. Right? That's religion. That is like an example of dogma.
Well,
right?
Just like we get bad billing as far as Christians from some of our really shitty leaders, you guys do too.
Like who from who?
Well, I think you have guys, again, those 4 guys, man, one of them's dead, but they went on the warpath against not just Christians, against all believers. And they did it. And they did it. Oh, I know. And they do it in a really, really, at times, really harsh way. And so it doesn't come across as humble. Now, here's the thing. I actually like most of those guys. I really, really do. Dawkins pisses me off, but I like Harris. I think he's on his way to being crazy one day if he keeps up with the DMT.
I think he's done with the drugs.
Is he done with the drugs?
Yeah, he's done with the drugs.
But my point being, so just like you guys can point to some idiot Christian leaders who are the last the last thing you would say they are is humble.
We don't need
you guys get some bad press.
We don't need.
Can I say something though? I'm not discussing I'm not talking about an individual leader. That's not what I'm saying.
I know.
I'm talking about the core, the fundamental, the principles that we're resting on. Right?
Just the simple belief of heaven.
Look, science.
You have no clue.
No, I mean, can you science rests on the idea that it can disprove itself. Right?
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about it, but that's also the problem with putting way too much trust in it.
No, it's not.
No,
Yeah, because in 20 years from now, a lot of things. This is one of the things.
Yeah, but so let me just ask a question then. Why is it that as we have moved, into modernity, right? That
and out of it now.
Yeah, what's that?
We're in post-modernity now. I mean, we're out of modernity at this point.
Yeah, well, I'm just talking as we move into the future,
Sure.
right? And religion clashes with Western science, right? Why is it that what has religion? When has religion proved science wrong? When has religion proven to be the reason that crops were failing? Do you know what I mean? Like
religion's goal should never have been and never has been to prove science wrong. Anybody who's gone out and tried to wield it that way is doing it wrong. Just like, and this is where I beef with Sam Harris, just like science's point is not to prove religion wrong. That's not the point of science. Science can't bridge the gap from is to ought.
See, this is a distinction that I feel like is a trick of words. This is not, explain what that means exactly, and then...
That science can't bridge the gap between is and ought?
Yes.
Science tells us what is. It helps us observe what things are, what they're doing. It cannot give us, now here's what you ought to do.
Right, and I know
it can't bridge that gap.
And
That's
your
not what
claim
it's
is that
intended
religion
to do.
does.
Absolutely, because take the word religion away for a minute. Christianity does.
Okay.
Because that's the only one I'm willing to talk. It's
It's
the only one I care about. You know what I mean?
You're kind of like moving
because
into
it gives me value. It tells me what my value is. It tells me my place in the universe. It tells me what your value is, my neighbor is, and tells me how I should interact with you. So back to it doesn't help me live better. I would actually say it helps me live better exponentially. I think that Christianity points to a better way to live, and we tend to intersect on a lot of those things. A lot of those things that Christianity says is better, you guys absolutely agree with.
But Christianity also says a lot of horrible things,
such as
terrible.
Well, just for example,
go ahead, you go first.
No, I mean, we can. I mean, there's like a sea of things to choose from, but just the homosexuality, right? Now, maybe if you're not a homosexual, that's not a bad thing. But if you are homosexual, and let's say you're born into and I've known plenty of people like this who are born into a religious family where it's shunned and or it's definitely looked down on, that can be quite damaging, right? And that is dogma. That is dogma in its purest form. Because think about it. If the Bible said every page something like, man shall lie with another man shall please God, this wouldn't be an issue. But it doesn't. It says... So that is where people are making, it's sort of like taking this, this belief system that you can kind of pick and choose from, right?
So in Christianity, basically
you've never answered the question. You've never showed me, and when I've asked you a couple times, the pick and choose of why gays are so bad and why sex before marriage isn't.
And yes, I have, but this goes back to, let me try to say this in the most broad way that I can. Christianity at a fundamental level is teaching all of us that we and this world, this creation, is broken at a fundamental level, right down to our DNA, right down to how we're born. That's why we see deformities. That's why we see all kinds of different things in this world and in this universe. We all, Christianity says, sin, which means that we fall short of the glory of God. In other words, He's perfect, we're not, and we're all imperfect in different ways. For some of us, that manifests itself as that person's a compulsive liar. For some of it manifests itself. We're all broken, all right? So right down to you may be born with a tendency towards being attracted to the same sex or whatever that is. What Christianity says is that God has an ultimate design for us. God had intent towards us. Sin has broken that. God hasn't left us to that. God is going to redeem and bring all that to bear. In the meantime, there is grace and there is mercy for the homosexual. There's grace and there's mercy for the heterosexual as sex before marriage. There's no difference as far as separation from God.
Why do you guys? But now this leads into other things, right?
Is that historical? Is that part historical? Like now this sort of, where do we navigate here? Sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's okay.
I don't fully.
He's asking, is this the historical?
Is this the historical part?
Well, I'm giving you a holistic.
But
this is all over the Bible.
But is it the historical or is it the poem?
No, this is all over the Bible. This is all over the Bible.
So
specifically Romans, we talk about that a lot.
Where were we? Oh, the heterosexual or the homosexual.
Yeah.
You both can have grace and go to heaven, right? I'm not talking about having grace and going to heaven. I'm talking about living right now, because this is the only thing that we actually do know is right here and right now, right? It's the only thing that we're positive of. You, me, all of us. You're not positive of heaven. He's not positive that there's not, and I'm not positive of hell, right? We just have today, right? And I know everyone's going to go off about, well, that's your problem, is you only live for today.
No, actually, the Bible tells us to do the same thing.
But today, the homosexuals are being greatly persecuted by the heterosexuals who are all religious.
That's such a big overstatement, Elliot. That is.
How is it such a big overstatement?
Well, because that's just not true. I think it was about 15 years ago, but now the most hip thing in the world is to be on the homosexual bandwagon.
That is, Scott. That is a real.
It is,
bro.
All right, let's.
It is. I mean, we live in Boulder, but I mean there's other parts of the country where that may not be true.
People are getting murdered.
Yeah, that's a very.
But you're making a broad comparison.
Who gets killed for being straight and having sex before marriage?
No. Who's been murdered? Who's been murdered recently for being homosexual in our country?
Can we look? You want to look it up?
It was actually very recently. But
Yeah.
I think
But my point being, you're making it out like we're lynching people in the streets,
no, I'm
and
not.
we're
No,
not.
I'm not. Of course you're not. No, I'm not.
But
You're
that's
doing
the
it much-
statement you just
No,
made.
it's not.
They're being persecuted at a broad
You
level,
won't let them
as if
enjoy.
we're out
You
there
won't-
burning
you won't let them
crosses.
enjoy the same thing that you enjoy, to go
Yeah, I
home
will.
with their husband or their wife and chill and be good with it. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, we've said this one before. You're just as intolerant towards the Islamic guy who's going to move into our country in 5 years and say, I want Sharia law and I want all 5 of my wives to be my wife, and you're going to say no.
Am I going to say no?
Yeah, you're going to say no.
Hold on
I
a
don't
second.
think I am.
Wait. This is a very false analogy.
No, it's not a false analogy,
really
because he has a stopping point just like I have a stopping point.
No.
And he's not going to have any reason to say no. You're not.
No, so look.
Go ahead.
This is, again, that's dogmatic.
No, it's not. That's just logic.
How is it not? How is it logic? Explain to me.
I don't mind if two guys go.
No,
listen,
but why?
I don't care. I've told you this before. I think they should be able to visit each other in the hospital. They should have benefits. I know that flies after you. I think they should be able to do all of it.
Dogmatic. This fucking fly.
Yeah, you missed it.
I know.
I think they should be able to have all of that. My only beef, and again, I'm not even arguing this from a Christian standpoint, is I'll put all the Bible, I'll put all of it aside. You're the one who always wants to bring up the gay marriage thing. The ship has sailed in my book. I think that ship has sailed. But you busted a blood vessel. What I think is this: logically speaking, you're not going to be able to stop that train once it leaves the station. So when the Muslim guys come to our country, just as one example, I'll give several more again if you want me to. And they say, I've got 5 wives and I want to immigrate here and I want all 5 of them to be my wives. What are you going to say when you want to say no? Or do you say, I don't care? Or when somebody goes, my affinity, I was wired to be attracted to horses and I want to be married to a horse.
Yeah, no, but this is...
Or when the person says, I'm really...
Dumb.
No, it's not dumb because you
is.
can't logically argue with it.
I can logically
Go
argue
ahead.
with
Do it. Give it to me.
So-
He's never been able to.
So when we're talking about Sharia law, right? Which we're talking about a lot more than a guy having 5 wives, right?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of consequences.
A lot of consequences, and one of them, right, is, and you kind of were bringing it up earlier. You were kind of heading into the moral landscape territory.
Yeah.
Right, and
The is and ought stuff.
Yeah, the is and ought distinction, which is a trick of words, right? It is, because look, here's an example, right? And this is in the moral landscape, and I've wanted to actually talk to you about this. So the whole idea between them, and I'll just make it quick to summarize it, but it's all dependent on consciousness, right? And that's why we feel no ethical obligation towards rocks. Yeah. Because they don't have any consciousness, right? Now, if you acknowledge that living in a universe where everyone is suffering at the maximum amount they possibly can, we can all agree that that's bad, right? That there's nothing worse than everyone in the world suffering at the most that they possibly can. Yeah. So once you acknowledge that is bad, right, that opens up a continuum, right, that you can kind of navigate along. So the idea is that the more biological complexity, the more that people can experience suffering and well-being, right, then that is where our ethical duty lies.
Begins and ends,
Yeah, so I don't think that it's fair to say that science can't play a role there. right? Because it absolutely can. I think we'd be being intellectually dishonest and to pretend that we can't discern, we can't discern what helps people's well-being and what doesn't, or what doesn't promote it. So the Sharia law you're bringing up, right, where women are having battery acid thrown in their faces, right? I think it's absurd to sit around.
This is the right point. Sorry.
And to sit around and pretend that we don't know that is wrong.
That's not what I was saying. You understand
He's
that,
just
right?
saying 5 wives.
Yeah, you understand that's not.
No,
what I'm saying.
I understand that, and I'm not saying that you're saying that that's okay, and I know you disagree with it. But I think what you would say is that we have this objective moral duty because God ordains that. It comes from this divine source. And I think that it's an emergent property among in human beings, and that if we know anything about biological complexity leading to ethical intuition, right, leading to a higher experience of consciousness, then we have a duty to give the things that can have a wider range of experience, right?
It all goes back to the question of why, and you'll notice that your statement began with the word assumption. So if you assume that. If you begin in a place that says this is good and this is bad,
right,
and we all get on the same page and go, of course, a planet where everybody's suffering to the maximum level is bad.
Yes.
A planet where everybody's experiencing good and pleasure to the maximum level is good. What you can't tell me is why that has value for conscious creatures. Why did we begin where we began? Why does my obligation towards these neurons that fire, and this is a more biologically complex thing, the cat is biologically complex and the cockroach is less so, or whatever that is. You can't tell me why my obligation is greater just because of their level of consciousness.
We can't.
Nobody can.
Nobody can. And I read a good article.
Not based on science.
I was starting to read a good article, and I didn't post it yet because I'm not done it. I got interrupted. And it's kind of this. It was kind of interesting. It was when you walked in after you came back from Whole Foods on Saturday. It was this ladder, and it's very likely that there's an organism out there in the universe that is looking at us like we look at a chicken.
Calling us simple.
Like we look at a chicken.
Yep.
So that might be able to explain all of this nonsense, right? And I'm very open to that. I think you're very open to that.
Sure.
I don't know if you are.
So you're open to the alien who can tell us what all this means.
And I'm open to your creator too.
Okay.
Oh, I'm open to your creator.
All right.
I'm very open to your creator.
No.
I'm very open to your creator. I'm not open whatsoever to Jesus.
Sure.
I won't say not whatsoever.
Jesus
you can show
is
it
awesome, man. You're missing out on Jesus.
I hear you.
You really are. He's great.
I know. I'd feel much better on a daily basis. I bet you. I'm trying to do it in other ways.
You may feel worse at times, but overall you feel better. Let me throw one thing out because I got to go too. But you mentioned the Hitler Pol Pot thing that I posted. All that you do know that was in response to his post that he made about religion being evil.
I do, I just want to say one last thing. I don't think
that was a terrible. And I said this to you. The name of the website was terrible. The guy's point was
but
much
I think
better.
you and I are both actually, in some sense, trying to say the same thing, even though we disagree on some of it. Is that ideas have consequences?
Yes, they do.
Which is, by the way, a really great book. I forget the name of the author, but it's a great book.
The last thing I want to ask was that we got posted on. So I posted that guy's thing, and you said the tolerance of intolerance.
Yep. This is one of the most ironic, funny things I see in our culture.
Mine begins and ends.
No, it doesn't.
It does.
No, it doesn't. You have your own.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you do.
I don't.
Yeah, you do.
Once, I don't care. I really won't care.
This goes back to my argument, though. So what about a guy who wants to marry a 13-year-old? Would you be intolerant towards him?
Would I be intolerant towards you want to marry a 13-year-old?
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah,
but again, look at it. Look at what you're asking someone. Look at what you're doing to the 13-year-old.
This is exactly my point.
Yeah, are you intolerant of a pedophile?
Yes.
Of course we are.
This all goes back to, but there's a difference.
So you're allowed to be intolerant to evil.
You're not allowed to be intolerant to things that you disagree with.
No, but here, can I say something?
Yeah.
Why are you intolerant to a 42-year-old man and a 13-year-old girl?
In our culture now, because that's pedophilia.
But there's a deeper reason. Like, it's because a 13-year-old isn't old enough to really be able to consent. right? They're not old enough.
In our culture. There have been cultures in the past where you're aimed at, this is what's happening when you're 13.
So societally, yes, we have been, I completely agree, right? So societal norms have pushed us in that direction, and that's an emergent property of human beings, okay? And I wanted to talk about, before we wrap up, because I didn't like the way we left off the is and ought thing, right?
Oh, sure.
It's like, look, the reason, okay, that we don't want someone to suffer, right, is because there's an empathy, human empathy.
Why?
What do you mean why?
Why? Where does that come from?
Human empathy?
Where does it come from?
Where does it
arise?
It's an emergent word. Where does
Why?
Yeah, but see, this is like
this is where he goes, it's God. He goes,
Well,
God gave us
I don't
this
know
like
how
that.
to explain
And we're
it.
just, I know you don't.
So
Neither
the
do we.
leopard doesn't have it.
No, it does.
That's absolutely not
true.
Not to the same
It's absolutely
degree.
not true.
But we have more
consciousness.
Yeah, we are
Leopard will eat its young. But you can't tell me why we have this level of human empathy. Like, you asked me.
And there's another wrong that might be able to. Who knows?
Can I say something?
Yeah,
maybe, and I understand your point. I know where we're going. It's like, I can't tell you why, but I'm also not a neuroscientist, right? What I don't do is make a claim based on bad evidence to answer that question.
Well, you guys like to say bad evidence, and I just have to disagree with that. That's just not
You said
true.
assume. You said the word assume. You can't show God whatsoever.
Yeah, I can. I can walk right out there and go, look at
No.
What would you look at?
What would you
I would
look
look at all of creation. We've had this many times.
You can't,
I'll look at that
but
tree.
there's no proof. That's just your choice.
No, it's design.
It's not.
Yes,
Show
it
it.
is.
Go ahead.
That's
Prove
just-
it. Go ahead.
so
Give
that's-
it to me.
It works intricately.
Give it to me.
How does that tree photosynthesize things from the sun?
There's a scientist who
There's a
can tell you
scientist
this.
who can
I
totally explain
know
it to you.
that. It's design, though, which indicates
Well,
a
but
designer.
where are you getting
Prove
that
it to me.
claim? Like, where are you
Prove
getting
it.
the claim
That it's organized and it works?
Yeah, but that means it's a
That
designer.
means that there's a
Like, this
designer?
is that's
what
a
other
fundamental
thing?
flaw.
What other thing in the universe do we see
Who
that has
knows?
design that doesn't have a designer?
What other thing in the universe?
If you go look at a car, you go, somebody built it.
This is the worst argument ever.
No, it's not. It's
Yes,
one's
it
been
is.
around
Read
for
the
forever.
Bible. Yeah, you should read the.
Read The Blind Watchmaker.
No, that's a terrible book. I've read it.
It explains it perfectly.
No, it doesn't. We've talked
This is
about
where your
this
critical
before.
think. This is what
This
I'm
is
saying.
where your critical
No, this is where my
ends.
critical thinking takes
No,
me,
it
bro.
ends.
It's
It
like
stops right
no,
there.
it's silly. It goes back to your deck of cards thing where you actually. Here's what you believe, and I'll be done. Here's what you believe. You believe that somebody won the lottery 34 times consecutively, uninterrupted, without somebody else ever winning it. That's the odds of the deck of cards falling in suit in order.
Oh, yeah, there's a mathematical equation.
Yeah,
that
it's
will
the-
give you-
Okay,
Yeah, it's crazy.
30. Okay, but that let's just be honest.
I know.
Hold on.
I know.
You're leaning all of your life on the probability that somebody could win the lottery 34 times consecutively. That's fine if that's where you want to lean your I don't use the word faith, but don't ridicule me for leaning mine against somebody who dealt the cards.
Can I?
You can't show me
That's a-
somebody who dealt the
I
cards.
know that.
But
But if the cards are laying there dealt out, I go, sure as hell somebody dealt them.
I know, but your critical thinking just stops.
No, because my critical thinking works.
No, it doesn't.
No, I don't think you.
need to.
We're not. I don't think we're understanding how long of a span of time.
Yeah,
first of all, like billions of years, right? Like that's a very big number. Okay.
Oh, yeah, huge.
So and by the way, the universe is not intelligently
Perfectly designed.
Yeah,
We are going to blow up.
Yeah, like something.
We're gonna
the
blow
sun
up.
Is going
So
to
how is this
explode on
so
itself.
perfectly designed?
Because it was intended to do that.
Yeah, but see, but here's the problem. Do you see how
intended
you
to
design
destroy
the end?
itself?
everything that you talk about is unfalsifiable?
Yeah.
Is it okay for there to be a life cycle?
What's that?
Is it okay for there to be a life cycle?
Of course.
Oh, that was designed to end.
What's that?
That was designed to end.
But it has to. But why does it have to be a creator to do this? It's not perfect. If you had a perfect design, when I make a perfect car, when a perfect car is made, I'll never need another one.
The claim is not that it's perfect right now.
Yeah, it is.
No, the claim is that it's flawed.
So
No, the universe, the
It's
design.
flawed.
So
The universe is flawed too.
Yeah, because sin has
So then
affected
it's not
everything.
So then it's not perfect.
isn't
No,
So then,
not in
so
its
then,
current
so then
state.
he's not perfect either.
No, he made it perfect. Sin has interrupted that.
When did sin interrupt?
Do you not
fucking-
see- wait,
when did
this is
sin
a-
interrupt 15 light years?
This is a whole other.
But don't we see how we're starting to we are taking our reality, and this is the difference. I feel like you have a story that you are mapping your reality to. right?
This is the
Your
Neil deGrasse
world.
Tyson's point.
Well, certainly I would agree that we all have a worldview, right? So we all have a filter through which every person does.
Yeah.
Everybody has a filter through which they see the world, and it is undeniable that Christianity is my worldview. You will not get me to dispute that.
And it's provincial. You were
What do you
born.
mean?
Well, so this is another thing. Like
As in Providence.
Give us 2 minutes.
Yeah, you were.
I know.
It's
Yeah, I
provincial.
know.
You were born into Christianity. Were your parents Christian?
My mom.
Okay, so you.
And my dad
So
wasn't.
through your
My dad
mother's
was a
milk.
pastor.
No. No, not even close.
When I say it's provincial, I just mean that look, like it's no accident that the different competing religions, right? People are born into them. Okay, so if you were born, and I've heard Elliot make this point earlier. If you had been born in the Middle East, you would probably be a Muslim, right? And I don't think that's something that is, I think, and I've heard you, and Elliot told me that you don't argue that. So when you look at that, doesn't that say, right? When we have all these different books, these inerrant texts, okay, that are in direct competition with each other, they're mutually exclusive. So what we start to look at is either one of those books is right, or every religion ever devises false. Mm-hmm. So when you take that lens and look, you have different books having these competing claims. They all are filled with contradictory material, right? And as you start, so you can either say one of those is right, and that means that whoever this creator is devised this, right?
No, that's a false assumption.
How is that a false assumption?
Because it's easily provable that men could have jacked up all that stuff,
Oh, so then how?
Because men are jacked up.
So how do we know the Bible's not jacked up?
That's a great thing to explore. That's why you have to go explore the Bible and go, okay, let's line them all up and let's put on our critical thinking hats and let's evaluate them all.
So you're going to honestly tell
I
me...
was born into a Christian home with my mom. My dad, they were divorced. He didn't become a Christian until I was in college. But and I've told Elliot this before, there is a point where a thoughtful follower of Jesus has to decide, do I want to embrace this as my own, or do I want to leave it behind, or do I just kind of want to live in this place where, I kind of inherited this from them and I think I believe it, but I'm not really thinking about it. I can genuinely tell you I've gone through the process of throwing that critical thinking on, looking at it, evaluating it, and coming out the other side and going, yes, I still want to embrace this. I want all Christians to do that. I really, really do. I think you guys would too. You would want somebody to critically think through whether they're going to embrace their faith or not. These are points of agreement I think we have.
I want people to base their worldview, right, and map on. I want their belief system, and this is what's important: is I want them to be able to map onto their reality. I want them to form their beliefs through evidence that they are acquiring from the external, from what they're taking in, right? And
two questions. One is you're saying I want a lot, but why are you allowed to project what you want on other people?
Because I think it's important to.
We get yelled at a lot for that.
Yeah, right? I know, but we're not telling anybody that they can't do something.
No,
you're telling them what they should do.
Yeah. We're not telling you that you can't.
Do
this,
which I'm okay with, by the way. I'm just asking for justification.
I'm about to give it to you.
Yeah,
because I think for human beings to survive, right? I think religion needs to play less of a role because it's divisive, right? It forms tribal, and I'm not saying it's the only cause, because like I said before, there's a lot of other dogma that is also a cause, but it definitely is a cause of tribal violence, right? And as we move further into the future, and this sort of divisiveness, this intrinsic divisiveness, you're seeing it with ISIS, right? Mm-hmm. This intrinsic obviously, there's a lot of heat on whether or not, and I'm not saying that we've been, angels in the Middle East. I'm not defending American foreign policy, but I am saying that, there is definitely a religious root cause. And is that something that you would deny?
For ISIS?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so you can, sure, right? But then when it comes to the homosexualities, or homosexuality being, chastised and basically people being oppressed, through Christianity, it's the same thing.
Let me clear that up real quick, just to say, I'm not saying that gay people aren't oppressed. I'm not saying that they're not abused.
And I wasn't saying that you guys are lynching them either.
Right.
No,
I was reacting to the statement that was, there's this overarching huge amount of oppression that sounded very much like you were making a comparison to lynchings. You know? So going that we have been there where guys were drugged through the streets. You know, that I think that's a misrepresentation of where we are. Is all I was trying to say, and I think that's good that you cleared that up too.
Yeah, and I'm not. I would never say that that's what you're insinuating, and most Christians aren't. I'm just saying, but there will be on the website. There are people that do believe that homosexuality is wrong.
Yeah, right? I do too. Yeah, I do.
And where does that belief come from?
From the Bible.
From the Bible,
Absolutely.
and that is my point.
That's
right?
the point.
And that is a claim that you would otherwise not make if it weren't for the Bible.
No, there's been lots of people who've claimed that's obviously not natural.
But it obviously is natural because all animals do it
as an unnatural thing.
No, that's not true.
It's another podcast for another day, but it's not.
Evolutionary biologists would take issue with what you said.
Yeah, they do. You observe it in nature, but it serves no purpose.
So then that's natural.
Yeah, it's natural.
No, just because it's done doesn't mean that it's the way things, evolutionarily speaking, are going to move you towards procreation. You know, just because it's done doesn't mean that that's.
It's a natural byproduct of evolution.
Sure.
Yes,
fair. It's a natural byproduct of evolution.
All right, we got to cut, right?
Yeah, I got to roll. I got a meeting.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it.
In all
thank you,
seriousness,
Scott.
man,
I really appreciate
the beer sometime soon.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
yeah.
I appreciate
the beer's
it.
much more fun.
Yeah, totally.
The beer's much more fun.
Totally. So this was Save the Sinner episode something or another. So I don't even know, 20-ish.
I don't know where we are.
20.
20.
All right.
Hank's on it.
Thanks for Ian coming in today.
Thank you, guys.
Peace out, people.